Welcome to 1991 Movie Rewind, a podcast where we watch and review every movie released in 1991, from the all-time greatest classics to the critically panned and everything in between. We will rediscover forgotten fan favorites and uncover hidden gems as we explore the depths of direct-to-video. Join us in our celebration of the fun, unique, and diverse films of this highly underrated year. This week, we watched Fried Green Tomatoes. And thank you for joining us on 1991 Movie Rewind. In Fried Green Tomatoes, while visiting relatives, Evelyn, played by Kathy Bates, befriends nursing home resident Ninny Threadgoode, played by Jessica Tandy. Ninny tells Evelyn the complicated story surrounding Idgie Threadgoode, her best friend Ruth, and a small-town murder in the 1920s. Screenplay by Carol Sobieski and Fannie Flagg, based on the novel by Fannie Flagg, directed by Jon Avnet, and released in limited cities on December 27th, 1991. Have you seen Fried Green Tomatoes before?
Yes, I've seen this movie a lot.
I expected that would be your answer.
Okay.
This was my first watch.
Okay.
Completely. I knew nothing about it other than the fact that it had Kathy Bates and Jessica Tandy, and that it was called that.
Okay.
But I knew nothing of the story or anything.
Wow.
I've avoided it this entire time. Not necessarily on purpose, just, the title doesn't inspire me to go watch it.
Go see it?
Yeah.
This is a mom and daughter type of movie.
That's probably fair.
I don't know. This is the type of movie I did watch with my mom a lot. Like, if it was on TV, we would just watch it together.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. And even though it's marketed as a comedy, at least in terms of award seasons,
yeah,
it's not that typical comedy that my family would have rented. It's not like the Naked
more,
Gun style or Three Amigos.
It's not silly. It's like it's a dramedy, I guess. I don't know
there's
when that
much more drama than there is comedy in this thing. But, it helps with the awards if you can separate them out and say, oh, there's a few jokes in there. But I will say that the comedy picks up a lot more in, the second half of the movie, where it seems like it's trying to be specifically funny, or maybe I'm just...
Like the Kathy Bates stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe just I learned her character by then, that some of her actions are funnier. Or maybe it's just that, she hits a breaking point and starts to fight back in life, and she's, and her actions and the way she handles situations, once she makes that epiphany, makes it a little bit funnier. I don't know. But even the flashback stuff seems to be a little bit funnier.
Yeah.
So, but not at first. Not for, the good, hour plus. It's almost pure drama.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you start off with her brother, Idgie's brother dying on a train track,
right?
Basically, so it's not a very happy-go-lucky type of a thing, and then it transitions into something we should probably give a trigger warning about.
Yeah, we should.
And that we're going to be talking about domestic abuse in this movie, because it does factor.
There's also racism.
Yes.
The flashbacks are in the Depression era South.
Yeah, it's like 1920s to 1930s, depending on when they're, what part of the story they're talking about. In fact, I think in my opening I said small town murder in the 1920s. I think that probably happened in the 30s, so oops. But whatever.
The story begins in the 20s.
It does.
With Idgie as a kid. And then, it just goes on to when she's an adult, I guess, a young adult. I mean, it doesn't really say, how old she is.
No, it doesn't. And it's a little bit off-putting at first. So the first scene, Idgie is maybe 10 years old or something.
Yeah, the first story, because the first scene in the movie is not really Idgie immediately.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's Kathy and her husband
visiting
but I mean,
an
like,
aunt.
the first flashback is
Yeah,
Idgie.
the first flashback scene. Yeah, and I forgot about this because I thought Idgie and Ruth grew up together. And I didn't realize that, like, Ruth was her brother's, like, girlfriend, I guess, or, like, wannabe girl. Like, they were sort of starting to date or something, or crush, whatever. And I forgot about that. I just knew that they were, like, longtime best friends.
Yeah, I think that's what was off-putting, is because Idgie appears about, like, 10, maybe 12 at the most, you know, in terms of
and
age.
then
And then Ruth looks exactly the same when they fast forward, and now it's, you know, Mary
That's
Stuart
what it was.
Masterson as an adult.
Yeah,
and Ruth looks exactly the same.
Yeah. And I mean, I was just trying, maybe her brother and Ruth were maybe like 5 to 6 years older.
Yeah, it could
They were
be.
probably teenagers.
Yeah, it's tough to say, and that's a huge family, and there's a lot of characters who just sort of come and go, and yeah.
Yeah, like her family, she has a big family, but they only focus on, you know, in the beginning, well, the first flashback, it's, you know, Idgie just gets along with her brother Buddy.
Like, it's her sister Leona's wedding.
Yeah, it's her older sister is getting married.
Again.
Yeah, you never see, like, anyone else in her. Because she has another brother, because Ninny is the wife of her brother.
Cleo Threadgoode. Who supposedly exists in the movie. There is a credit for a young Cleo. I don't know who young Cleo was.
I thought it was... Okay, so in the first flashback, when Idgie comes down the stairs, she has to wear a dress for her sister's wedding. You know how Buddy is like, oh, you're doing great, blah, blah, blah. There was another boy that was like, oh, you look like, not kind of making fun of her.
Yeah,
teasing
like,
her.
oh, you're disgusting.
I thought that was Cleo.
It's not. It's Julian.
Okay, well then I don't know.
Because they show older Julian later on when they're trying to rescue Ruth.
Yeah.
And he has the glasses. And that's how you know, because they both have glasses.
Okay, I thought that was Cleo. So she comes from a big family, but they don't show her whole family. It's just the older sister, Buddy for sure, and I guess Julian.
And
then her.
Julian.
But they don't say, like, how many kids are in her family.
No. And, like, the dad only appears in that first scene, and they don't really say what happened.
Yeah, she doesn't really... I mean, when they show, like, her older... It doesn't show her with her family.
No, it's mostly with, you know...
Mostly her mom.
The mom and the help, which
and
is...
the help. But I'm assuming that, like, all of her siblings just married and went off somewhere else.
Right, and probably the dad passed away, but we don't know for sure.
Yeah, they never even said anything about the dad.
Yeah.
And then the mom passes away, like...
Off screen, they
don't show it, but like a year before this quote murder happened, pretty much, before the trial.
Before the trial.
So she pretty much has like no family except for the help.
Yeah, I mean, they even say sort of like after Buddy passes away because he gets hit by a train. Which is
in the beginning.
Weird situation. So basically, like, he's chasing after Ruth's hat on the train tracks. And you kind of know that something's going to happen, like, right away when, like, when you focus a minute or so on him chasing a hat down train tracks, even though you don't hear a train coming.
Yeah.
You kind of know that something bad's going to happen.
Anything with a train track.
Yeah.
You, like, if you watch, like, Stand By Me, I don't know, like, anything with a train track.
Yeah, anytime when you're dealing with, like, transportation and you're focusing on certain aspects for too long, I don't know, I have a really hard time watching scenes where people are driving and there's certain camera angles because it makes you think, okay, they're going to get hit, you know?
Yeah, if they focus too much on it.
Yes.
You know something's going to happen.
Yes. So he gets his boot stuck in the track in, like, some transitional section of the track, even though it's a straightaway and there shouldn't be any reason for that thing to exist. He gets his boot stuck in some weird, like, you know, track switching mechanism.
Yeah.
And a train does now start to come and he can't get out.
They don't show him get hit, which is good.
they show close-ups of people, Ruth and young Idgie, screaming.
And, you see him struggling because then he's trying to take his boot off. And he does take his boot off.
Yeah.
But you hear, like, a loud horn of the train and then Idgie and Ruth screaming. And then that's when everyone... This is during her sister's wedding. Yeah. Like, everyone in the wedding goes down to see what's going on. And, then they cut to his funeral. So... I mean, that's a good thing that they don't show.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely trying to be, it's either a PG or a PG-13 movie.
Yeah,
I'm assuming 13. So yeah, they're not trying to be graphic in any way.
Yeah, which I'm glad they didn't. Because then there's there's other parts, like even with the murder, they don't really show him dying or dead.
Yeah, you hear a clunk.
Yeah, and then
you see him flop to the ground, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The most disturbing part is when Big George is getting whipped by the KKK at some point. That's the most graphic. I mean, disturbing, even though you don't really see anything specifically.
Yeah, that's the most disturbing. And then the second most disturbing part is when Ruth is leaving the house with Idgie when she's older, and he kicks her down the stairs.
Oh yes, definitely.
Those are the most disturbing parts of the entire movie.
Yeah, there's no gore, but there's definitely some disturbing moments in here. It took me aback that Buddy died because, again, I've never seen the movie, and the opening credits, they show the cast and they say, here's Chris O'Donnell, and he's like the third or fourth name on the credits, so I assumed he would have a bigger role.
But it's just
no, it's really just like this 5-minute thing. This is one of his first parts. After this, he went on to do other stuff like Scent of a Woman and, Batman and Robin and Three Musketeers and NCIS LA for like a million years. But this is one of his first parts. And honestly, like that first section, the acting was really bad. I'm so glad they were able to push past that so quickly. Like Chris O'Donnell was not good. And young Idgie, I'm sorry, she just didn't, she wasn't one of the best young actresses we've seen. But, it's a quick little moment there.
They show them for 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah. Something I wanted to ask you, I mean, I'm kind of curious as to this because a lot of the awards, we'll get into the awards more later, but a lot of the awards recognition came for Tandy and Bates. Mm-hmm. But that's not where most of the focus of the movie is. And I don't really understand the appeal or I don't know why they were focused on instead of Mary Stuart Masterson and Mary-Louise Parker, who carried this movie.
Yeah. That's when I was looking at the awards again for this, I was surprised to not see either of them nominated for anything.
Yeah.
And it was just Kathy Bates and Jessica Tandy. I mean, Kathy Bates, I like Kathy Bates in this movie. So.
Oh, yeah, I do too.
And then Jessica Tandy, she just tends to just always play sort of the same character. But, I mean, I like her in this movie too.
Yeah, so...
But it's just, you resonate more with Mary Stuart Masterson and Mary-Louise. Their friendship, or their relationship.
Right. Yeah, there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I know.
Right. I don't know if it's that the awards cycle just gets caught up on past winners and nominees, and so because Kathy Bates had recently won for Misery like 2 years prior, right, and then Jessica Tandy had just won from Driving Miss Daisy like a year before, and so now here are these two Oscar winners who are coming through, and they're in a movie together that is getting awards recognition, and is released in late December specifically to court the award system. Yeah. But I mean, Kathy Bates' character was good, had some nice progression throughout the whole thing, and I understand it's a fun person. Jessica Tandy, she did what she could with what little she had. I mean, she was basically doing some brief narration. Mm-hmm. And she had some nuance in her face when she was saying certain things, especially near the end. And we can talk about the whole ending scene and the note on the grave and whatnot in a minute. But I mean, it's not enough to earn a nomination.
No, yeah, I agree, because I was surprised that neither of the two Marys, I guess, were nominated.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this is more, because I think, didn't they get more nominations for Golden Globes, and it was mostly under the comedy section.
Yeah, but...
So, and then, like, Mary Stuart Masterson or Mary-Louise Parker, they were more of the drama.
Well, they don't split the awards that way, though.
I know, but
if the movie's a comedy, then everything's under comedy.
Like, their part of the movie was the dramatic part.
And so then you think that hurt them because they weren't as comedic?
I guess. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know. And then, like, the Kathy Bates, Jessica Tandy part is the comedy.
Maybe. That's a good theory, at least. But yeah, whatever. All we know is that Stu and Lou were not nominated. I say that because that's apparently how Jon Avnet, the director, had to reference them.
Well, yeah, because they're both named Mary. I mean,
Mary Stuart, Mary-Louise.
You could have said Mary Stu, Mary Lou.
Yeah. So what was I talking about? Oh, the bad acting transitions away into good acting as we get into the second part of things, basically. I really liked the dynamic between Idgie and Ruth. In terms of like the acting, the two performances, I thought they had a nice on-screen chemistry.
Yeah.
Ruth's character took a long time to come out of her shell, which I think was obviously intentional.
Yeah, I mean, I never read the book, which usually I mean, when I was younger, I was not reading these books, but usually, like, now I like to read the book and then see the movie, but I never read this book even afterwards. But I think that's, she's like this prim and proper lady, and she grew up with the church. Like, her father was
very religious,
well, he was a pastor, and then she just grew up with the church, so she was just known to be like this prim proper woman.
And then
Idgie's like the
free
typical
free tomboy,
spirit, yeah.
Does not care what anyone thinks about her.
And I mean, it doesn't. I mean, her family is also religious, but I think Idgie seems like to be the youngest, from what it looks like. She's probably the youngest child out of, I don't know how many. I mean,
unless Cleo was youngest, and we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know
which one was Cleo.
But she seemed to be the youngest, so like her parents were like whatever. Like by the time like Idgie was born, they were just like let her do whatever type of thing.
Yeah. Also, I think they explain away a lot of her behavior because of Buddy's death.
Yeah, I mean,
and they just let her be on her own.
I mean, Buddy was her BFF growing up. He understood her, and it seemed like no one else in her family really did. Maybe her mom a little.
Right.
But I mean, that's her mom, and then her and Buddy were just side by side and then he died, and it really. I mean, her grieving process, she just decided to leave her home, but I think she just came back whenever she felt like it.
All they really say is that Big George took care of her.
Okay.
But, I mean, they were on the property because Big George was helping around the house.
Yeah, Big George was helping her family around, so...
Yeah, I mean...
He was just looking after her when she was around.
Yeah, it was Big George and Sipsy.
They made it seem as if she was living this, like, Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn lifestyle.
In a way, I mean, she was coming and going as she pleased.
Yeah.
She spent, when we catch up with her in
she's
the second
like fishing
part of it,
on her own.
Yeah, fishing on her own. She's going to the local hangout to gamble and drink with all the deviants.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably like her way of getting money and then her own food.
Possibly, yeah.
And then she just comes home
rebelling.
to say hi to her family like every once in a while.
It seems like she still has a good relationship with her mom, right?
Yeah,
she comes back from fishing and hands Sipsy the fish and says hi to her mom and everything.
Yeah.
So there's still a good relationship there. It's just, she's allowed to be free.
Yeah. Yeah, I think her mom was like, I'm not gonna force her to do anything. Just, let her live her life. But that's when they bring Ruth back, because so Ruth is now maybe, see, I don't know the timeline.
No.
And I guess Ruth is what, like, Idgie is what, like 21 maybe? And then really Ruth is like 25, 26. I really don't know. Yeah. Like, Idgie is probably like late teens, early 20s, and then Ruth is mid 20s. And for some reason, so she comes back to like help with the kids from her church, like her father's church, I guess.
Yeah, something like that. Some like summer school type of a thing.
Yeah, because she's only there for the summer. So I don't know if she was like at college, or they don't really say. I don't know.
Yeah, they don't say where she was, I don't think, but after the summer she's going to go back to Georgia.
So I don't know if
this takes place in Alabama. Like, everything is in Alabama on Idgie's side. So she's going to go back to Georgia and get married.
But I don't know if that's where her husband was from, or if her family lived there as well. They don't really explain.
No, they don't.
But I know
a lot
that
that's probably left out that's in the book.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I didn't read the... I mean, I know certain things that happens in the book that did not happen in the movie, which we can talk about later.
Probably a lot of it has to do with the relationship stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean... But yeah, in general, so during the summer, Ruth and Idgie reconnect, and they become very close throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, but I think her mom
Ruth gets taken
wanted...
out of her shell.
Yeah, her mom wanted Ruth to, like, bring her back to her family, sort of, or, like, bring her to her senses to, like, become an adult.
Maybe.
Because they show Ruth and her mom talking, and she's like...
Yeah, maybe this wasn't a good idea. So there's two ways I could think about this, right? Because, one, Ruth is a woman of God, right? She's, very religious, and Idgie's the free spirit who needs to be possibly reined in, and so that could be part of the plan, is to give her some structure and boundaries. Or, you know how there was that one little scene, or one shot, really, in the beginning where Buddy and Ruth and Idgie were walking along the bridge, and Idgie holds her hand back and, takes Ruth's hands.
Yeah.
Is there a chance, because they really flattened the relationship side of the movie, is there any chance that the mother brought her in because she knew how much Idgie loved Ruth and wanted to sort of reconnect them in that way?
Or because Ruth was Buddy's girlfriend and they both had a similar trauma happen to them.
Right. And
so they can bond through this trauma.
Yeah, like talk and fully heal through that.
Yeah.
We'll assume one of those three.
If someone who's read the book, maybe I'll, like, read the book, actually.
Yeah, they certainly do different things with this than what I heard, at least in terms of the ending of the book. Because there is another little, what if scenario that we haven't touched on at all, that I think is more clarified in the book from what I was reading. So
yeah,
I like that aspect of this movie. I like that aspect of movies where there is some ambiguity and you can make your own interpretation.
Yeah.
So it could be like one of those three types of scenarios as to why Ruth is back at all, and any of them fit. You can make all of them work, and that's great. But if the idea was to rein Idgie in through Ruth, it backfires because Ruth becomes more of an open person and a free spirit and whatnot.
Well, she sees how Idgie is not a bad person.
She's just very eccentric and daring, and
she's kind of like the Robin Hood and Huckleberry Finn of the Whistle Stop area. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Like, because she's just, like, everyone in that town knows how she is. Mm-hmm. Like, the men and women, they just know that she's just this free-spirited woman, and, she's never gonna want to get married or settle down and have kids, which is what, like, every woman during that time should be doing. Maybe that's why they brought Ruth in.
Right.
To, like, be like, oh, because there are times, like, when Ruth, when the summer ends and Ruth is like, well, I'm going to marry whatever the fuck, Frank. Like, at the end of summer, I'm getting married to Frank and we're moving to Georgia. That's just, like, what women did. And then she's like, what about you? Like, are you going to settle down? To Idgie.
Right.
Idgie's like, no.
Yeah. Idgie's always sort of careful with her language in that way to basically try to say, oh, she skirts the issue because she doesn't want to admit.
She's like,
admit her feelings
she's
to Ruth
like,
fully or whatever it is.
I have a bunch of prospects, and that's pretty much it. Like,
a lot of people are courting, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Idgie is the type of free spirit. She's the one who will, hop on the train and distribute food to the, the homeless that are nearby on the tracks, and she'll stick her hand in a beehive to literally steal honey from the bees because she has, that confidence about her.
And then Ruth is just very attracted to that. I guess she's just never seen any other woman do these things.
Yes.
Like, because everyone, in the South during that time, you have to be, like, the women have to be, like, just quiet and do whatever the man says or whatever, or God, or do whatever is godly. And this is not exactly, quote, godly, even though she is more, like, godly than, like, anyone else in the town, because she is the one that's, like, helping all of the black people, all the homeless people, like, yeah. And she's befriending all of these people that others look down on.
Yep.
And then Ruth is just enamored by that.
Yeah. The only way she's not godly is the way she, like, heckles the pastor, or...
Yeah. I mean, but I think she does that out of just, love, to get a rise out of him or whatever. She's not doing it because she hates him or anything. She just kind of, like...
I think she's just anti-organized religion.
Oh, yeah. But because she has her own... Like, her religion is just, like, be good to others. Mm-hmm. But that's pretty much what you're supposed to learn from organized religion.
Right.
Not be judgmental.
Agreed.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know if we want to go through this plot by plot.
I don't know. I mean, we kind of did.
It. But
I mean, we're mostly talking about, like, the Idgie Ruth and that, but, like, going back and forth. I mean, as Kathy, like, Evelyn is learning about Idgie's story, she's becoming, because Idgie is probably more kind of like how Ruth is, where she's the housewife.
You mean Evelyn is more like how Ruth is?
Yes. Did I say that?
You said Idgie. You said Idgie was more like how Ruth is.
I don't. Okay, Evelyn. Sorry. Yeah. And then Evelyn is more like how Ruth is, and just the housewife, quiet, does whatever her husband wants, and then it's established that, like, they have a son, and the son is, probably out to college recently. They're
empty nesters.
Yeah, so she's trying to ignite something with her husband again, like, more of a relationship, because... And plus, she's, like, she can't be a housewife anymore, because, like, her son is gone, so she's probably like, what do I do now? Because I don't have a child to take care of anymore. So she just, like, she's starting to take those classes with her friends about exploring, like, it's more, I don't even know, it's like exploring yourself, but then also trying to, like,
it's
ignite something with your marriage.
It's
now
like
that you're
counseling with only one person.
Yeah, it's like women's counseling and to help them with their marriage. Mm-hmm. Because they do things where they have to look at their own vaginas in a mirror, like, to, I don't know, get, like, back into their own sexuality or something.
Right. Or they talk about, they make a joke about wrapping themselves in cellophane or whatever.
Yeah.
And your husband at the door is sort of like a sexy surprise, which
I've never even heard of. I've never even heard of that.
That was a weird one. But they show, like, I don't know if it was a real flashback to her
I
doing
think that was her thinking about...
Or if that was just her, daydreaming about how
I think
it would
she
go.
was daydreaming, like, what would I look like in cellophane and how would my husband react to me?
Yeah.
Because then she asks him after
Yeah.
making him dinner one day, like, what would you
do?
what would you do if I was wrapped in cellophane? He was like, I would take you to the loony bin or something.
Mm.
That's what he would say.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense to me either. Honestly, it's like, why is it? Okay.
But yeah, she's more...
She's trying to do something to improve herself is the main thing.
Yeah, and then it's not really working with these classes, and she's trying to connect with her husband, but, you know, he just comes home from work. She makes him dinner already on the table, but he takes the dinner and goes straight to, like, the armchair TV tray and watches, like, any sports on TV.
Yeah.
And pretty much ignores Evelyn, and then she's, like, trying to really connect with him.
Yeah. And just nothing that she does is working.
Yeah, but she develops this relationship with Ninny Threadgoode because in the beginning, she is visiting, like, an old folks' home with her husband, and they're visiting... His name is Ed. Ed Couch.
Ed Couch, played by Gaillard Sartain. I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
Yeah.
Gaillard Sartain. He's going to be in a few more 1991 movies.
Yeah.
Death Falls, Guilty by Suspicion, and The Chase.
I know him the most in, like, The Ernest Hayburn.
Yeah, he's big in the Ernest universe. Yeah, I didn't write a whole lot about him because he's going to be covered more. Yeah. There's a huge cast in this. I know.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so they're visiting his aunt, which they never show his aunt, but I guess the aunt does not like Evelyn, so Evelyn is just, you know, in the waiting room while Ed is visiting with his aunt, and then that's when she meets up with Ninny, and then, you know, they start to form this bond over this story that Ninny is telling her every time she visits. And then this story between Idgie and Ruth is inspiring her to be more like Idgie, I guess. Just, you know, confident and, you know, thinking outside the box and just, you know, sticking up for herself and stuff like that.
Yeah, so you get... It's not really a direct parallel, but you can see, you know, exactly, you can see the inspiration and how she's going to take different steps and how, if you don't like something about yourself, go ahead and try to change it yourself. So, I mean, the classes are a good thought, but, you know, she's doing things in the early scenes like eating candy bars constantly.
Yeah.
And so she transitions into, like, a healthier snack later on. I forget what
it was just like...
it
was just, like, cut up carrots and...
Yeah, some...
Like
I think
raw.
she said crudité.
She said crudité, which is cut up raw vegetables, basically.
So, yeah, and then you see her, like, on a little mini trampoline, and she's going to go to the gym and stuff, so she's,
yeah,
you know,
she has a job. She's like Mary Kay. She's selling
Yeah, she gets
makeup.
her own job to, like, make friends or, you know, just be out in the world more.
Because she was just a housewife, and then now she's like, what do I do with my life? And then there's, like... sometime in the movie, like, one of my favorite quotes that she said is, she's like, I'm too old to be young, but too young to be old.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, is she, like, our age at this point? I don't know.
It could be.
But, I mean, she's probably, like, 45-ish, maybe.
Yeah, it could be. It's tough to say. I mean, there is a subtle physical transformation in her too, like in the way that she does her makeup and hair throughout the movie as well.
Yeah.
To try to, you know, age her down or something.
Because they don't really say... but, I mean, you're assuming that, you know, if you have, like, an 18-year-old kid, you're probably, like, I don't know. If you got married early and had kids early, you're, like, in your 40s at this point.
It's always hard to judge ages in things that are 30 years old because, you know...
I know.
Everyone looks older in the past.
Yeah. Like, I don't know how old Kathy Bates was at this time.
No, me.
Because I always assumed that she's just like 50 forever.
Nothing against Kathy Bates.
No,
it's just,
it's
just the way
like,
the mind works.
Like the first time I saw her, I
When you're young
assumed
and
she
you
was
know
like
something.
50, and then when I see her now, I'm like, oh, she's still 50. I don't know.
Yeah.
Even though she's like 70s now,
Yeah,
probably.
who knows? So, so yeah, you got that arc and everything, and then you have the Ruth and Idgie arc, which takes a lot more of a roller coaster type of a ride, because you go through the whole thing with Frank and their house and rescuing her from the abuse.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's where we see older Julian come in with Big George to help Ruth move out.
Yeah.
And by the way, just real quickly, older Julian, did you recognize him at all? Because I was trying to place the face, and then finally IMDb helped me put the pieces together.
I've seen his face.
Yeah, I think everyone on this podcast who's listening to this podcast has seen his face at some point. Haynes Brooke, he's best known as being the Jimmy Dean's son.
Okay.
So the guy who dressed up in the sun costume and hawked sausages for a decade. That's him. But he's also in Sleepaway Camp 3. It's this weird villainous, just total a-hole guy who gets his comeuppance at some point. So, the Jimmy Dean son is in this movie. They're with Big George, who, they rescue Ruth from Frank and take her back to Alabama.
Right.
And that's where that disturbing scene happens of her being kicked down the stairs. I will say at that point, okay, I guess we'll get into this. At that point, when that happened, that led me to think that Idgie, or that Ninny, was Ruth. Because slightly later on in the movie, right, Ninny says that she had a child named Albert who had a mental disability, and lived until he was 30 and then passed away. I thought because Ruth had been kicked down and we hadn't seen the son yet.
No,
in
but
the
she's
movie,
probably early in the early ages of pregnancy, 6 to 8 weeks
right.
pregnant. But I don't know
but
how.
But in
that
my head, I was making that connection. Oh, maybe mental disability because she had the
the
traumatic
baby
fall
at that point is
pregnancy.
the size of a peanut. So I don't.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just telling you, that's where I
or
thought.
The fetus. I should. Okay.
The main thing is, I didn't think that Ninny was Ninny. I thought Ninny was either going to be Idgie or Ruth, and that made me think that she was going to be
because when
Ruth.
I was younger watching this, I thought Ninny was Idgie because of the ending with Bee Charmer letter and then the honey at the grave, right where she was. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh. But then it can't be, because in the beginning of this movie, when Ninny introduces herself to Evelyn, she's like, I am Mrs. Cleo Threadgoode. And then she talks about her husband, Cleo. And then she even said that she had a crush on Buddy Threadgoode when she was younger. So they don't show her in the past stories.
And I still think that she could be Idgie. I still think it's possible. I think she could be.
I think in the
spinning
books,
a tall tale. She's spinning a good thread good. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I mean that honestly, that. I think that last name is on purpose.
So you think she just renamed herself?
I think she
sort of
adopted that name. I mean, she says that
from
she was
Idgie
basically
to
an
Ninny?
adopted member of the family. Even though she was married to supposedly one of these
Cleo Threadgoode
people that we don't see in the movie.
Well,
and if she was around, why is she not inserting herself into the story?
I think in the movie that makes you think that she is Idgie, but I think in the books it's a clear
separation.
It's clear separation that she is not Idgie.
Yeah, but I think there is ambiguity. I think you can interpret some of these things and say, even if Buddy was her brother, her saying that she had a crush on her brother doesn't mean that she wanted to date him.
So she's just telling a tall tale.
Just sort of exaggerating how much she admired her brother.
Right,
it's
I get
weird
it.
phrasing of saying how she admires her brother.
Okay.
Because
even she talks about this friend, Mrs. Otis, Ninny, talks about how she's going to move in with this friend, Mrs. Otis.
Yeah.
Who turns out to be... We didn't even talk about Sipsy yet.
Not much.
Yet. Yeah. Who was Cicely Tyson in the movie.
Oddly credited as special appearance by Cicely Tyson.
Even though Cicely Tyson has been in a bunch of other things. But...
so it's not really a special appearance. She's like a legitimate supporting character.
Yeah.
She's in a lot of scenes.
I was thinking, like, is Sipsy and Big George, are they married to each other?
I know that they say these things at some point, but I don't fully know the relationship. I think Sipsy is Big George's mother.
Oh.
I'm honestly not 100% sure. But there is a significant age difference between them. So I think it's that Sipsy is his mother.
Yeah, you see them
and you see the little girl, but I don't know who the little... I don't know the little...
Thipsy's daughter?
Or whoever that little girl is, if it's Big George's daughter.
Because, okay, we are told when Ninny Threadgoode, she's gonna get out of this old folks home, she's gonna move in with my friend Mrs. Otis, and then we learn that Mrs. Otis is Big George's, not Big George, Sipsy's daughter.
Okay, I thought they said babysitter, and like I wrote a question down, like Mrs. Otis was Sipsy's babysitter, and she just died, like just
no.
I don't know. There's a lot of weird.
Mrs. Otis
the
is Sipsy's
names are not very clear in this movie.
Sipsy's daughter. That's where I was like, oh, because then
that's who that little girl must have been. Then.
Yeah, that little girl was probably. They don't say her first name, so Mrs. Otis. Okay.
So we're probably getting some relationships wrong, and I apologize to anyone who knows the answer. And
they don't show. Yeah, they don't show her, Mrs. Otis, when she's older, but they do show Mrs. Otis's daughter, because when Evelyn meets Ninny at one point, she's like, oh, I'm Mrs. Otis's daughter, and that's when she tells Evelyn that Ninny's house was condemned and she has nowhere to go, and she's not going to live with her and her mother.
Right.
But then we also find out that Mrs. Otis dies.
Yeah, near the end.
Near the end, where Evelyn thinks Ninny dies, because this is near the end, where Evelyn has built this relationship with Ninny so much, and then she knows about how Ninny doesn't have a home, so she tells her husband, I want, like, more than anything in the world, for Ninny to live with us. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of like, are you sure type of...
Oh, he's very anti.
Yeah, he's anti it.
That's like the biggest argument they have in the whole movie, because they don't really show... They don't show a bad relationship in terms of, language or yelling or fights between Ed and Evelyn. It's more just that Ed completely ignores Evelyn's existence, except for, hey, give me my food and drink, please, thank you very much, I'm going to watch the game now.
Right.
But that's the only time they get into any sort of like argument, and it's not like super heated or anything. It's just
But it's like, established.
This will not happen, type of a thing.
It's established at the very end. Evelyn's taking Ninny home.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't care what my husband says.
Right. Yeah, because she's now more of an Idgie type of a person.
Yeah.
So I mean, at the end when they see that note left on Ruth's grave. And the honey and everything, and I guess there's two ways you could think about that as well, right? So you could either think that, okay, Idgie, well, I guess three, right? Either Idgie is a third person who did leave that note and is now gone, because Ninny says, oh yeah, maybe we will see Idgie today,
because we see the honey at Ruth's grave.
Evelyn says, oh, maybe we'll see Idgie, and Ninny's like, yeah, maybe we will, with like a little knowing smile type of a thing. But then, so that could be that I was also thinking her. Like, so you're seeing me right now,
right? That's what I thought when I was younger watching it.
Yeah, I think that's what you're meant to think is at least a possibility. Or maybe she's saying that Evelyn is an Idgie now. Like
Idgie lives through. Like Idgie lives within all of us, like you and me, type of thing. Because I mean, if you take it literal, like Idgie might be here, but I mean, so at that point, Ninny is like what 84, I think, because she had her birthday and she was in her 84, I think. And then I was like, well, then Idgie would have been what, like 90 maybe?
Yeah.
If she's still alive.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm thinking about the beginning scene where Ed is on a payphone at the rundown Whistle Stop Cafe that's been closed down, and Evelyn hears the ghost train go by.
Yeah.
That Ed doesn't hear. So there is like a little bit of like a supernatural essence.
She's like, did you hear?
Floating throughout the movie in a way. So.
Well, she has like, she's feeling the essence of this little town. Yeah. I guess
she's getting like that connection.
She's enamored by it or whatever.
So. Weirder things have happened. But again, I like the ambiguity of the whole situation. You know, I can easily understand why someone would not think that Ninny and Idgie are the same person. I'm going to choose that they are. And I don't think either one is right or wrong. The book clearly spells it out and says that they are two separate people, but that doesn't mean that the movie has to be the same.
Right.
Let's talk about the title.
Yes.
Fried green tomatoes, because they show up about an hour in. I mean, you see it on the sign at the very beginning, but to actually see the actual food, fried green tomatoes, it doesn't happen until like an hour in when, at some point in the story, Ruth and
the
Idgie
food fight.
Open up a kitchen together. Or they open up a diner together, which advertises fried green tomatoes, and it's already open and established. And yet, Idgie's like saying, hey, do you like these? You know, like, what about putting this on the menu? This thing that's already on the marquee.
Right.
And yeah, Ruth is basically saying these are terrible, and then they get into a playful food fight.
Which in the book, this is where it's supposed to be more sexual, I guess.
Yeah, I could understand that. From what you know of the book, is the title and that scene sort of meant to be a representative of when they fell in love fully or something, or became like more of a couple?
I think so. I mean, it was just meant to be more intimate. It's like an intimate scene between the two of them. But if you see it in the movie, because they're in the kitchen and they have patrons in the front watching them, and they're like, what the hell's going on with these ladies? Yeah. Like, so I don't know.
The guy who plays the sheriff, Grady, comes by. He's like,
it's just like a romance. Like, I don't know if that scene, the food fight scene, like engaging in that in the book, finally ignites something between the two ladies. I mean, I compare, like, this book, or even this movie, I was thinking about The Color Purple a lot.
Yeah.
Because the movie and the book, The Color Purple, is different from the movie. And then there is the same ambiguity of this lesbian relationship in The Color Purple that it happens in the book. But it didn't happen in the movie, but you sort of see like this bond between two women that it's like a did it or did it not happen type of thing, like a very ambiguous ambiguity. I mean that's like late 80s, early 90s, where they're not going to show an actual lesbian relationship at that point.
I mean, they will in certain circumstances, but they're afraid of, the mass appeal if they show too much of it.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think they both have that in there to the degree where if you are old enough to recognize that type of thing, you're going to see it. But if we're 10 or 11 years old and watching this type of movie, I don't think I would have ever picked up on that aspect
I
of it
didn't
at all.
When I was younger, but then, like, reading this, I mean, even watching it now, you can see they do love each other.
Yes.
They have a bond.
You don't hear them say it except for in the courtroom scene.
Right.
You do hear Ruth say, I love her.
Yes, and I love her.
Under oath.
Yeah, under oath, I love her.
Yeah. So that's the first time we hear it. But yeah, it's definitely there. You can clearly tell it's more than a friendship, but it's not so overt that it's going to ruffle the pearls of the clutchers.
So another thing is, I know Mary-Louise Parker, growing up, she was in a lot of movies where she was always the dying lady.
Oh, really? I didn't really notice that. I didn't. I'm not a huge film buff in that way where I recognize those things. I know Mary-Louise Parker from some of her other stuff, but not. I haven't seen her a whole lot. I haven't seen a lot of what she's been in.
Because I know that from watching it when I was younger, and then she's in another movie, Boys on the Side. I don't know if you've seen it. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, I don't want to say it's similar, but she has like similar characterization in that. And she also dies young in that. And I was like, is she just the young lady that dies in every movie? Until I started watching, like, I didn't see her for a really long time until I started watching Weeds. I was like, oh, it's her.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, it's Mary-Louise Parker.
Yeah, I think she had something of a little bit of a gap in terms of like big roles until Weeds started happening. Then she got all the Emmy nominations for that. She was on West Wing as well, and she got nominated for that. She won an Emmy for Angels in America. But I mean, yeah, I guess we'll find out when we watch 1991's Grand Canyon, because she's in that as well. If she dies young in that movie, then I don't know if anyone dies in Grand Canyon, but
yeah, I don't know. I get that movie confused with The Big Chill, so I can't remember.
Grand Canyon?
Yeah, so I can't remember what happened.
I have seen Big Chill. I have not seen Grand Canyon.
Both of those movies are too much alike that I can't remember who was what. And
I think the only person who dies in Big Chill is Kevin Costner at the very beginning, right? He's like dead from the start.
I honestly don't like.
I'm pretty sure
those two movies like mix in my mind that I can't remember. Like those are two movies that I saw when I was younger, and they were like the same movie to me.
Okay. But I do wish, because the title was Fried Green Tomatoes, that there was more food involved in the movie.
I mean, they talk about their barbecue being the best barbecue in all of Alabama.
Yeah, they do. They don't show a whole lot of the food.
And
there's a little bit of cakes and pies at the beginning for the wedding. You see the fried green tomatoes a couple different times.
See when they open up their diner, you see all the pie, because they're always. I guess they're known for the pie because they're always offering pie.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know if we should get into this, but like the disturbing part, I don't know if this was true, but when we find out what happens about Frank's death, at the very end, Ninny was like, this is what really happened, because throughout the movie, it's implied that he's
chopped up and served to the folks.
Well, no, it's implied that, like, Idgie killed him, because throughout the movie, she's like, if you touch Ruth again, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you. Yeah. Like, she literally says that, and then when she does go to trial, they're like, didn't you threaten to kill him? She's like, yeah, but, yeah, so at the very end, Ninny's like, here's how he died. Mm-hmm. But, yeah.
Here's the way it really happened.
Yeah. And, so he is accidentally killed because he comes in and he is part of the KKK with these other dudes from Georgia. They want to take back... Oh, we didn't even talk about the baby. This is like Ruth's son. His name is Buddy Jr.
Buddy Jr.
So
they decided to name him.
And I was like, is that his middle name, though? Because how can he be Buddy Jr. when it's not the literal son of Buddy? And it can't have the same name unless you name him Buddy Threadgoode Jr.
I don't know. I mean, the rules might have been different in the 20s
I know, but
and 30s,
I was like,
whatever.
Is his name Buddy, middle name Jr., and then I don't know what last name they would use. Like, is it
I forget what
Jameson for Ruth Jameson?
Yeah, Jameson.
So he's Buddy Jr. Jameson.
Probably.
Okay. And then so, like... He comes in and tries to take Buddy Jr. back because that's his son. And then that's when Sipsy is like, no, she's like defending the baby, but also Ruth is. But, he kind of pushes Ruth to the side and Sipsy's like standing up for her. She's like, you don't scare me type of thing. And then this older man who is like kind of like this drifter, homeless man that...
Smokey.
Yeah, Smokey. That Idgie...
Smokey Lonesome.
Yeah, Idgie and Ruth. Yeah, Idgie and Ruth help him out a lot. So he's just, a friend of Ruth's and Idgie's.
Yeah.
Comes in, he's like, what's going on? And then he's like, you can't take Miss Ruth, because he loves Ruth. He says that, like, in the end.
Yeah.
He's like, you cannot take Ruth's baby and, fight. Not even a fight. Like, just Frank pushes him down and Sipsy, but then Sipsy takes a frying pan and just hits him up against the head, and then he clunks down. So he's dead, I guess. Mm-hmm. But then she calls Big George, and then Big George gets Idgie, and that's when they're like, well, what are we gonna do? And it's implied, they don't show this at all, that they chop up his body and they serve him as barbecue.
Yes.
Which, that's kind of disturbing.
I mean,
but,
yeah.
Because they never see a body.
No, they never find a body.
They never find a body, so...
and they keep on saying,
if that really happened, I was like, okay.
That's even the tagline of the movie, the secret of life, the secret's in the sauce.
Yeah, that's kind of...
So, like, knowing how the movie ends up is kind of a weird tagline to choose. Apparently there are, like, deleted scenes or extended scenes. If you're watching it on, like, TV, they add some additional context to some of these things where, Grady says that he's not in the KKK, even though he's accused of it by Idgie in this. There's parts where, Big George refuses to serve a couple of the other black kids who are trying to get some of that barbecue because he knows what it is and he doesn't want to feed it to them. So, like, there's stuff like that that's cut out of the theatrical version that I guess exists in other versions that might be on TV or whatever.
Like on a DVD special?
Yeah, something where they have to pad the running time to make it fit a certain length with commercials and whatnot. So yeah, there's the strong implication that, yes, he has been served to I don't know how they choose who to serve it to.
Well, they definitely serve it to the Georgia, that detective guy.
Yeah, they serve it to the Georgia detective, but, I mean, they don't have any animosity to the vast majority of the town, so, like, they're just gonna, like, feed a person.
I thought they would just, like, feed him to the pigs, and then the pigs that they use for barbecue. So they ate him.
Maybe.
And then the pigs meat from eating him. I don't know. That's what I was. Maybe. I was like getting
either way, you still have the
thinking
same
too much into it.
Yeah, you still have the same type of weird thing going on.
But I mean, what about his bones and stuff? Whatever. I mean, this is the 30s. They're not gonna do DNA. There's no DNA testing and stuff.
It's also just a movie.
I know.
where they leave out a whole bunch of stuff in between.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, should I just read the book to find out, like, if there's more info about his death? Also with Buddy Jr., we do have another train situation where you think that Buddy Jr. also dies by getting hit by a train. He's just... Okay, it is established that he is 5 years old at this point, but he looks full on 7 or 8.
Yeah, at least.
But, Ruth is a teacher. She's, like, teaching kids outside, and this is well established that, that Frank is gone. They don't know that he's dead. I think she's happy that assumed that he's just gone and has left her alone for life, I guess. So things are back to being normal and happy life for her. And that's, you see everyone eating at the Whistle Stop Cafe. She's teaching her kids outside. And then, Buddy Jr.'s out running and playing. And he's on the tracks, and then you hear, like, him crying, and, it's the same thing all over again with Buddy. And then you see another funeral, but it's a funeral for his arm.
So evidently he got run over by a train, but just his arm,
which that's traumatizing as well.
And yeah, like, he doesn't seem to care a whole lot, except like, kids make fun of me because I have to play baseball different.
Right. Like, and then if you were Idgie and Ruth, wouldn't you be like, never go by the train ever at all without like some sort of supervision because Buddy died?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't you be like so traumatized by that you wouldn't want like your own son?
Yeah, or, maybe the town could do something to prevent people from being on the tracks at all.
Right.
Since they know someone had died there in general. But, whatever.
I don't know, it was the 30s. I don't know.
Yeah, they don't care. It is a part of life, being run over by trains.
Right.
So, but yeah, everything works out fine.
And then,
but we never learn what happens to Buddy Jr. in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, well, because then soon afterwards, Ruth comes down with cancer. I don't know,
That's what they say, yeah.
I don't know if it was like ovarian, because her mother also died from cancer when Idgie came to visit her the first time after she got married. She's like, my mother died. Oh. And then she talks about her mom's
there's like
death.
A potential covert message in the obituary.
About her.
Basically asking Idgie to come.
Yes.
To see her.
Because, they didn't speak to each other for a really long time. It didn't say how many years, but...
Yeah.
But, her mother, Ruth's mother, died from cancer, and then she gets cancer, and then it's like a matter of weeks before she finally just dies. But then, I'm assuming Idgie takes care of Buddy Jr. Like, Idgie and then Big George and Sipsy, like, they're all now the family for Buddy Jr.
Yeah, after Ruth passes away, that's really the end of the story. And then Ninny has her, she leaves the nursing home with that, that confusion of Mrs. Otis passing away and whatnot. And so Ninny leaves the nursing home, and then, there's that little last coda where she tells Evelyn how Frank really died. But, they don't go into what happened between Buddy Jr. and Idgie after that. They don't talk about how that was handled or give any sort of resolution. And I'm sure that was intentional to possibly build that ambiguity of, is Ninny Idgie at the very end? You don't want to say too much about where she went from there, because you want people to believe that Ninny could be Idgie. And so maybe it is handled more in the book. Because I think in the book they say Idgie passes away at some point, right? And so they can't be the same person, because Ninny is still alive and telling Evelyn these things, but Idgie has literally died in the course of the book. So spoiler for the book as well as the movie. But either way, honestly, it's I didn't miss that. I didn't need to know what happened to Buddy to have a satisfying end to this movie. There's a lot of characters that you're kind of like introduced to, and you don't really know what happens to them. They just float in and out. The main thing was Idgie and Ruth's relationship, and so once that is officially over,
right,
with Ruth's passing, then it's okay to wrap it up. We'll quickly go into cast and crew then. We'll talk about Jon Avnet very briefly here, the director of the movie. He was Emmy nominated for The Burning Bed and The Starter Wife. I don't know either of those projects. The Burning Bed and Starter Wife, I don't know what they are. But they were things that he was Emmy nominated for. He's mostly known as a producer rather than a director. He produced Homeward Bound, Risky Business, Mighty Ducks. He also directed Up Close and Personal in 88 Minutes, which was an Al Pacino movie. He also produced the 1991 movie Backfield in Motion, which is that Roseanne Barr, Tom Arnold thing. So we got that to look forward to. Carol Sobieski had passed before this movie was released. She died in 1990 from liver disease. But she was known for writing things like Annie and The Toy, and also Money for Nothing, which came out after her passing. She also wrote a couple episodes of The Bourne Identity, which was back in 1988. I did not know that there was a version of Bourne Identity from the 80s.
Me neither. I did not know that.
It existed. It starred Richard Chamberlain and Jacqueline Smith.
On
It's like, I think it's TV? Like a limited, I think it's just 2 episodes. I think it's like a limited series type of a thing, or a mini-series event.
Okay.
But that's all I gathered from it. She also wrote a whole bunch of episodes of Peyton Place, that soap opera. The other writer, Fannie Flagg, was also mostly known for her comedy stuff rather than her writing up until this point. She did some acting in Laugh-In. She was on the new Dick Van Dyke Show, Harper Valley PTA. She did a lot of work for Candid Camera. She was doing a whole bunch of game show appearances on Match Game, Hollywood Squares, Pyramid. So she was known as like a comedian and actress, and then transitioned and did some writing, and this book was like her big big breakout. Kathy Bates, we know, talked about her Win in Misery. We'll see her again at play in the Fields of the Lord and also Shadows and Fog. She's also in a movie called The Road to Mecca, which is not on our list. We're not able to find a copy of that to watch. And interestingly, she's not in the movie Frankie and Johnny, but that part for Frankie was written for her. But she lost out on the role. She was in like a stage production, but not in the feature film version of Frankie and Johnny.
That would have been weird. I mean, I've seen Frankie and Johnny, and that would have been a
probably
weird,
both
like,
parts would have had to been cast differently.
Yeah, because I'm
because it's Michelle Pfeiffer as Frankie instead of Kathy Bates, but it was written specifically for Kathy Bates.
I'm thinking of her and Al Pacino in that movie, and I'm like, it's not working in my mind. Like,
so I don't know. We can talk about that more when we get into it, because I've never seen the movie, but it's just a really interesting piece of 1991 trivia in there. Jessica Tandy we also talked about. I think this is her only 1991 movie, but she's well accomplished, and she's been in movies since the 1930s, and she also won a Tony for her role in The Streetcar Named Desire, the debut on Broadway, but she lost out on the feature film version of that to Vivian Leigh. Mary Stuart Masterson, no major awards for her, except she does have an MTV Movie Award nomination for Best On-Screen Duo for Benny and June.
Okay.
But we'll see her again in 1991's Married to It. She's known for Some Kind of Wonderful, Radioland Murders. Mary-Louise Parker, we talked about her as well. Cicely Tyson, the special appearance by Cicely Tyson as Sipsy. She has an honorary Oscar from 2019 and a nomination for Sounder from back in the 70s. She's been Emmy nominated 5 times for her role in How to Get Away with Murder. She's been on 10 episodes, but she's been nominated 5 different times for her guest appearances.
Okay.
For that. She was in Roots. She won an Emmy for Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. She's done a whole bunch of stuff. And she's a legend at this point. Who else do we need to talk about here really quickly? We have we didn't really talk about this character, Richard Rale, who played Reverend Scoggins, who I think everyone knows him from Office Space.
Yeah, he's the Reverend.
Yeah, he's the Jump to Conclusions guy, is he not?
Yes.
So he's there, and he's the Reverend that has sort of a little bit of an arc in there as well. But we'll see him in Shadows and Fog as well. He also played Ed Rooney in the Ferris Bueller TV series.
I mean, I'd rather have him as the principal
than Jeffrey Jones.
Yes.
Well, knowing what we know about Jeffrey Jones. But yeah, I mean, for a TV series, that's not a bad casting. And then I also definitely want to talk about... we can talk about Frank Bennett another time, because he's going to be in like 5 different other 1991 movies, so we'll talk about Nick Searcy, who played Frank Bennett, another day. But I do want to talk about Missy, who we didn't talk about by name, but she's in the classes with Evelyn. She's like her friend in the marriage counseling stuff.
Yeah.
Constance Schulman. These days, I think most people recognize her from Orange is the New Black.
The yoga lady.
The yoga lady.
The Yoga Jones is...
Oh, that's her character name is Yoga Jones?
Yeah.
Okay. We've seen her already in the 1991 movie He Said, She Said. She was the makeup girl in that. She's also in McBain and Lethal Innocence. She was also on the Loving TV series for a little bit. But I know her best as Patty Mayonnaise in Doug. So she's the voice of Patty Mayonnaise in the Doug TV series. And so it's really weird to see her doing like these
her
adult roles at the exact same
time.
Yeah,
because you think of her as like a teenage girl.
Yeah, like this preteen,
when you think of
the sweetest
that
girl
voice
in the world in this neighborhood.
But she has that type of voice. I mean,
oh yeah,
where even now, because even as Yoga Jones, she still has that voice.
Yes, her voice has not changed. So yeah,
I mean, it's
if
kind
you
of,
want to hear Patty Mayonnaise as a
it's kind of
convict,
like,
then watch Orange is the New
It's like
Black.
Pamela Adlon, like her voice. You can always
hear Bobby Hill.
Yeah, which I mean, you can even with The Simpsons, like any of the voice actors for that you think
Definitely. So yeah, Patty Mayonnaise is in this movie, so I wanted to mention that real quickly there. And then that's probably about it. In terms of awards, this did get a few Oscar nominations, but it didn't win any awards from either the Oscars or Golden Globes. Oscar nominated for supporting actress Jessica Tandy. She lost to Mercedes Ruehl. Adapted screenplay, lost to Silence of the Lambs, Ted Talley, script for that. Golden Globe nominations for the best comedy, lost to Beauty and the Beast. Kathy Bates for best actress, lost to Bette Midler for The Boys. Tandy lost to Judy Davis for One Against the Wind. And then the most prominent win that this movie had that I could find that I think is worth mentioning is the GLAAD Media Award for Outstanding Film. So glad it won the Best Outstanding Film, shared with Frankie and Johnny. So it got a little bit of recognition in the gay and lesbian community for, even though it wasn't overt, it was enough to be recognized by GLAAD.
Yeah.
And then obviously it was a huge box office success. From what I can find, the 11th grossing movie in the U.S. for 1991 made about $82 million on a budget of 11. On to true crime and pop culture we go.
Yep. So no true crime. The true crime was the death of Frank.
I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of similar cases, but
right.
Yes.
I did try and find was this based off a true story, but it wasn't. I don't know if it was loosely just based off of her life or anything like that, and she just wrote from what she saw growing up during that time, maybe.
Yeah, it's tough to know. Writers write what they know, so maybe she knew something,
right,
or heard something, or heard a thing from a thing from a thing.
Yeah, more trivia about this movie, and then I also found something else out that this maybe turned into a TV show.
I could see people trying to do that.
But this kind of blew my mind. And I got this from southernliving.com.
Okay.
It was just kind of a 10 things you didn't know about the movie, but a lot of it we already talked about, obviously the lesbian relationship, but then, there was another thing where this was originally going to be written as a musical instead of a movie. And then, the Whistle Stop Cafe was based off a cafe that Fannie Flagg went to, and it's in Irondale, Alabama. But they have an actual real-life Whistle Stop Cafe that's in Georgia. That's called the Whistle Stop Cafe.
Yeah, it's become a huge tourist.
And I looked it up, and it's still open. And it's in Juliet, Georgia, and it's 20 minutes from Macon, Georgia. Fried green tomatoes, the cuisine, was not a popular dish at all in the South until this movie was made, I guess. So, according to Southern Living, this Southern dish, fried green tomatoes, wasn't really a Southern dish until the movie made them one. When the movie came along, it became such a huge interest that, now fried green tomatoes, the dish, started to appear on menus across the South, and it was because of this movie. So now fried green tomatoes, the dish, is a very Southern staple. So it's a new Southern staple as of 30 years ago, I guess. Yeah. I didn't know that at all, because, whenever I think of Southern food, I automatically think of fried green tomatoes. Or gumbo, or I don't know, shrimp and grits.
Maybe it was just super regional or something that was, I don't know. It's weird how food evolves. Lobster was a garbage food for a long time.
Right.
Until it became not.
It wasn't a Southern cuisine until this movie made it one.
Yeah.
And now it's all across the South. And I like fried green tomatoes.
They're
all right. And then this other article that I found on Variety is that Reba McEntyre is set to star in a new NBC series based on the novel and film Fried Green Tomatoes. And it's going to be...
How recent is this article?
October 2020.
Oh,
so
okay.
I don't know this is happening. Like, I didn't see anything else. So this is a year ago, and this is the only article. So I don't know if there's like further movement in this or not.
Yeah, things can change.
Yeah, it could
quickly.
like 3 months later they're probably like, nope. But I didn't see anything else. Reba McEntyre is Idgie, and then she's returning to the whistle stop after a decade away. And then it's her struggling with the changed town, her estranged daughter, I guess, and then a failing cafe and a life-changing secret. So moving on to TV and music. So the top 5 songs that was on the Hot 100 as of December 28th, 1991.
The end of the year, the last
one.
The
very last week. The top 5 songs of 1991 were Black or White by Michael Jackson. That's like right when that video was released. Number 2 is It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday by Boyz II Men.
Okay.
Number 3, All for Love by Color Me Bad. Number 4, Set Adrift on Memory Bliss by PM Dawn. And then number 5, When a Man Loves a Woman by Michael Bolton.
All right.
TV. So December 27th was a Friday. And then, it had TGIF, but it was all repeats because, it's Christmas time.
Yeah.
And they did have, on CBS, there was a Disney Christmas on Ice.
Okay.
After that, I tried to look this up. There was an episode of The Carol Burnett Show, and it had Robert Townsend as a guest.
Huh.
I tried to look this up, but I couldn't find it. Because I was like, oh, let's watch it. And on NBC was Matlock. After that was a show called Pacific Station. Have you heard of this show?
No, but it sounds like it's either about firemen or policemen.
It seemed like 1991 was the year of like you're a policeman or like a DA of some sort.
Yeah.
So Pacific Station centered around Detective Bob Ballard, who was played by Robert Guillaume, from Soap. Mm-hmm. And a wisecracking veteran cop who had been assigned to Pacific Station in Venice, California, apparently usually a dumping ground for eccentric and incompetent officers. But this only lasted a season. And this episode was the second to last episode that was aired. So they only aired 10, and then the last 3 weren't even aired at all. So it was canceled after the 10th episode, which was on January 3rd, 1992. So
yeah, they just buried it.
And then after that was Dear John, and then we talked about this before, Reasonable Doubts. Mm-hmm. That's with Marlee Matlin and Mark Harmon. More detective and DA stuff.
Yeah.
And then I thought this was funny. On Fox, December 27th, so 2 days after Christmas, they had The Fly 2 on.
Here's a happy little New Year's movie for you. On to rankings and ratings. On your 1 to 5 star scale, where would you put Fried Green Tomatoes?
I'm going to give this movie a 4.
Okay. On my 0 to 4 star scale, I'm right up there with you. I'm going to say it's a 3.5. Yeah, I think really much better than I expected overall. I just wish maybe there was a little bit more to understand who different characters were at any given time.
Yeah, like who's Cleo?
Yeah. I mean, I'm fine with the ambiguity, but I shouldn't have to figure out like who is Mrs. Otis in relationship to Sipsy and Big George and like all these different things.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of weird that I don't know. But anyway, every movie's worth watching once. Would you watch this again?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think you're going to find any new answers to some of the ambiguous questions that are there, but it's fun to look for clues.
Yeah. It's just a good movie to watch.
Yeah, it's just in general a good, fun, uplifting movie. If you out there want to watch Fried Green Tomatoes as it's recording in October 2021, it's available on Showtime, digital rental, VHS, or DVD. As always, check your local listings. As far as you can listen to us on all of your major podcasting platforms, please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and tell your friends. It does help us out a lot. You can email us at 1991movierewind@gmail.com. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Letterboxd. Just search 1991 Movie Rewind or go to 1991movierewind.com for the full list of 800 movies, along with show notes and more. Next week, we're continuing Food Month with Salmon Berries. It's available on Prime, Tubi, Shout Factory TV, digital rental, VHS, or DVD. We will see you then.
Thanks.